At her mother-in-law's Jubilee celebration, amidst all the relatives, Svetlana Pavlovna forced her impoverished pregnant daughter-in-law, Lena, to wipe her shoes. Lena calmly smiled, complied, and then produced documents, stating that before they proceeded further, she needed to ask where everyone was watching the video from. "Enjoy listening." Lena gazed into the mirror. The white dress fit perfectly, accentuating her slender frame. Today was a momentous occasion, her wedding day to Igor. She offered a smile to her reflection, attempting to dispel the faint unease lurking deep within her soul. Igor was her love, her dream. She truly believed a happy life together awaited them. However, from the very beginning, their relationship was overshadowed by one significant factor: his mother, Svetlana Pavlovna. And Svetlana Pavlovna was an imperious and domineering woman, accustomed to absolute control. She had built a successful business and expected everyone to bend to her will. Lena immediately failed to earn Svetlana Pavlovna's approval. The latter perceived her as a gold digger, someone seeking to exploit her family's wealth. Svetlana Pavlovna made no effort to conceal her disdain for Lena, frequently making cutting remarks about Lena's humble origins, her attire, and her demeanor. "You are hardly a suitable match for my son," she would often declare, her displeasure palpable. Lena tried to disregard her mother-in-law's barbs, cherishing her love for Igor and hoping that with time Svetlana Pavlovna would change her opinion. Unfortunately, Igor never stood up for his wife. He was far too beholden to his mother, fearful of incurring her wrath. He chose silence, hoping the conflict would resolve itself. On their wedding day, Lena held on to the hope that things would improve. She believed that now that she was Igor's wife, Svetlana Pavlovna would finally welcome her into the family, but her hopes were not realized. Even during the wedding reception, Svetlana Pavlovna seized every opportunity to demean Lena, constantly emphasizing her own authority in the household and making it clear to Lena that she was insignificant. "Don't forget, dear Lena, who elevated you," she remarked as Lena approached to offer congratulations. "Be grateful that my son even noticed you." Lena remained silent, refraining from engaging with the provocations. She understood that any word from her could escalate into a full-blown argument. Her sole desire was for the day to pass peacefully, devoid of quarrels and hurt feelings. Yet, the tension mounted with each passing minute. Lena felt increasingly uncomfortable. Igor noticed his wife's distress but did nothing. He continued to be intimidated by his mother. Lena felt utterly alone and powerless. She recognized that she would have to fight for her own happiness within this family. Following the wedding, Lena's life devolved into a nightmare. Svetlana Pavlovna relentlessly interfered in their lives, micromanaging their every move. She found fault with everything Lena did: her housekeeping, her clothing choices, her interactions with Igor. Igor still failed to defend his wife, preferring to avoid confrontation and hoping for a natural resolution. However, the situation only deteriorated. Lena grew progressively more miserable. She realized that drastic changes were necessary, or she would simply break. One day, Lena discovered she was pregnant. She rejoiced at the news, hoping that the arrival of a child would alter Svetlana Pavlovna's perception of her. She believed that a grandmother would inevitably love her grandchild. Yet, even this hope proved unfounded. Svetlana Pavlovna reacted to Lena's pregnancy announcement with suspicion, accusing her of intentionally getting pregnant to ensnare Igor and gain access to his fortune. "I always knew you were a money grubber," she told Lena. "You think by having a child, you can keep my son. You're mistaken. I won't let you ruin his life." Lena was stunned by Svetlana Pavlovna's words, unable to comprehend such cruelty. She understood then that she would have to fight not only for her own well-being, but also for that of her unborn child. Svetlana Pavlovna decided to celebrate her milestone anniversary with considerable fanfare. A grand restaurant in the city center buzzed with the elite, business associates, government officials, and long-standing family friends. Lena felt like an outsider, a stark contrast to the polished and self-assured individuals surrounding her. Nevertheless, she maintained her composure, offered smiles to the guests, and extended congratulations to Svetlana Pavlovna. though each word was a struggle. Upon arriving at the venue, Svetlana Pavlovna contrived to detain Lena near the entrance. "Remember, dear Lena," she hissed, her voice dripping with undisguised animosity. "You are here solely due to Igor. Know your place and do not disgrace my family." Lena remained silent, her grip on her husband's hand tightening. Igor averted his gaze, none unwilling to meet her eyes. He had never defended her, perpetually afraid of defying his mother. Inside the restaurant, an atmosphere of forced merriment prevailed, underscored by loud music. Waitstaff navigated the room, offering guests exquisite appetizers and fine beverages. Lena felt conspicuous, as though she were constantly under scrutiny. She attempted to smile and engage in conversation, but her efforts felt futile. The tension at the family table was particularly acute. Svetlana Pavlovna presided, surrounded by her inner circle, with Igor seated beside her. Lena was relegated to a seat at the far end, her presence seemingly a mere formality. Throughout the evening, Svetlana Pavlovna found subtle ways to needle Lena, making disparaging comments about her modest background, her lack of social graces, and her alleged mercenary intentions. "Little Lena, why so quiet? Entertain the guests. Show them what Igor has taught you," she would say with feigned solicitude, though her tone was laced with mockery. At a certain point, Svetlana Pavlovna escalated to open aggression. She deliberately picked up a napkin from the table and tossed it at Lena's face. "Clean my shoes," she commanded, her gaze fixed on her daughter-in-law with contempt. "They've gotten dirty, and you're just sitting here doing nothing." A hush fell over the room. The guests froze, awaiting Lena's reaction. Igor paled and lowered his eyes. He knew his mother's capacity for extreme behavior, but even he hadn't anticipated this. Lena looked at Svetlana Pavlovna. Her eyes held no trace of fear or humiliation, only a chilling resolve. She slowly rose from her seat. Doe retrieved the napkin and calmly approached her mother-in-law. She knelt and began to wipe the shoes, doing so deliberately and meticulously, as if performing a mundane chore. The room was deathly silent. Lena finished cleaning the shoes and rose from her knees, standing tall and meeting Svetlana Pavlovna's gaze. A fire burned in her eyes. "All done?" she asked softly. Lena straightened herself, feeling dozens of eyes on her, filled with curiosity, astonishment, and, if one were to be honest, schadenfreude. Many expected her to break down in tears, flee, or collapse, but Lena had no intention of providing such a spectacle. Rage simmered within her, yet outwardly she remained composed and collected. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in her hands. In her handbag, resting on an adjacent chair, lay the documents, waiting. Slowly but surely, Lena walked to the chair and opened her bag. With the files in hand, she surveyed the assembled guests. Svetlana Pavlovna, seated at the head of the table, watched her with unconcealed hatred. Igor appeared frozen, his eyes wide with fear and bewilderment. "I believe it's time to clarify a few things," Lena began. Her voice was steady and confident despite her inner turmoil. "Tonight, as you may have all observed, has been quite enlightening for me. I've come to understand much and have made a decision." She opened the folder and removed several stapled sheets of paper. These were Igor's resignation papers from the family company. Lena had prearranged this with his direct supervisor, a man Igor trusted and who had long recognized Svetlana Pavlovna's suffocating influence over her son. And this individual had agreed to assist Lena, recognizing it as the only means to liberate Igor from his mother's control. "Igor," Lena addressed her husband, "here are your resignation papers, signed and notarized. As of today, you're no longer employed by your mother's company." A dead silence fell upon the room. No one could comprehend what they had just heard. Svetlana Pavlovna seemed struck speechless. Her face flushed crimson with fury, but she uttered no sound. Igor sat as if paralyzed, staring at Lena with a look of utter incomprehension. "Lena, what are you doing?" he finally stammered, his voice trembling. "I'm doing what I should have done long ago," Lena replied, her gaze unwavering. I am protecting myself and our child. I will not allow him to grow up in this atmosphere of humiliation, deceit, and hypocrisy. She swept her gaze across the assembled guests as if issuing a challenge. I am leaving, Lena announced, and I am taking my child with me. I do not want him to witness his father and mother being belittled and oppressed. I do not want him to grow up thinking this is normal. Lena approached Igor and placed the folder of documents before him on the table. This is your chance, Igor, she said softly. A chance to start a new life. The decision is yours. Svetlana Pavlovna stood rigid, as if struck by lightning. Her usually haughty and inscrutable face contorted in a grimace of pure rage. The eyes that had previously radiated superiority now blazed with an anger she could no longer contain. She glared at Lena as if she were her sworn enemy, as if Lena had dared to trespass upon her most sacred possession, her authority. What? What have you done? She hissed, struggling to find words, her voice quivering with rage, betraying her inner disarray. You dared? You, a penniless girl, think you're in charge? Igor stood as if thunderstruck, his gaze shifting between Lena and his mother, struggling to process the unfolding events. His eyes conveyed utter confusion. He was accustomed to his mother making all his decisions, dictating his life, and controlling his every move. And now, Lena, the quiet and unassuming Lena, had dared to defy her will, to dismantle all his future plans. Mother, he began, attempting to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He didn't know how to justify himself or to whom. His mother, who always expected his unquestioning obedience, or his wife, who had finally exhibited strength and resolve. Lena looked at Igor with sadness and disappointment. She saw his confusion, his indecision, his fear of his mother. She realized he remained the same boy Svetlana Pavlovna kept on a tight leash, and it pained her to acknowledge that she had failed to awaken the true man within him, one capable of making his own decisions and taking responsibility for them. There's no need to say anything, Igor, Lena said calmly, her gaze fixed on him. I have already said everything. The choice is yours. Either you remain here in this gilded cage under your mother's thumb, or you come with me and start a new life. A life where there is room for respect, love, and freedom. Svetlana Pavlovna, seeing Igor hesitate, attempted to regain control. Don't listen to her, Igor, she shrieked at her son. She just wants to use you. She's a gold digger. She dreams of our fortune. Don't let her destroy our family. Her voice was laced with hysteria. She was prepared to do anything to keep her son under her sway. She understood that if Igor left, she would lose not only him, but also a part of her power, a part of herself. Lena cast a disdainful glance at Svetlana Pavlovna. Do you truly believe I married Igor for money? She asked defiantly, meeting her gaze. Are you so cynical that you don't believe in genuine feelings? I loved Igor. I hoped to build a happy family with him, but I cannot live in an atmosphere of deceit, hypocrisy, and constant humiliation. I will not allow you to break me and my child. I am leaving, she stated firmly. I am leaving to start a new life. A life where there is no place for your tyranny, Svetlana Pavlovna. And I hope Igor finds the strength to follow me. With those words, Lena turned and headed for the exit. She walked slowly but purposefully, without looking back. She knew that her fate and the fate of her child were being decided at that moment. She believed she had made the right choice, that she had done what she had to do. The guests parted before her, as if afraid to block her path. Some looked at her with sympathy, others with admiration. They saw in her a strong and independent woman who dared to defy the established order, who was not afraid to go against the will of the all-powerful Svetlana Pavlovna. As Lena reached the door, she paused for a moment and turned back. She looked at Igor, who still stood as if paralyzed, and a glimmer of hope shone in her eyes. Hope that he would ultimately decide, that he would choose her, that he would choose their future. I will wait for you, she said softly, and exited the restaurant, leaving Igor with the most difficult choice of his life. Svetlana Pavlovna left alone amidst her bewildered guests, felt the ground slip away from beneath her. She was accustomed to controlling everything and everyone. She was accustomed to her word being law. And suddenly, some girl she considered insignificant dared to shatter her plans, to strip her of her control over her son. Fury consumed her. She felt her world crumbling, her grip on the situation loosening. She was prepared to do anything to get Igor back, to exact revenge on Lena for her audacity. "She will regret this," she hissed, clenching her fists. "I will not let her destroy my family. I will crush her, no matter the cost." At that moment, a cold, calculating glint appeared in her eyes. She was ready to wage war, a war to the death, and she had no intention of losing. Igor stood rooted to the spot, unable to move. He watched Lena leave, watched her disappear through the door, and felt as though he were losing something profoundly important, something he couldn't live without. He understood Lena was right. He had indeed lived in a gilded cage, under his mother's constant supervision. He realized he had never truly become a man, that he had never learned to make decisions independently and bear responsibility for them. He heard his mother's shouts, her accusations, her curses. He saw her anger, her rage, her desperation, and he was terrified. He was terrified of defying her will. He was terrified of losing her support, her protection. Lena stepped out of the restaurant, and the cool night air pleasantly soothed her flushed face. Inside, a tempest still raged from the ordeal, but outwardly she felt a profound sense of calm. It was as if a tremendous weight that had pressed down on her for months had been lifted from her shoulders. She inhaled deeply, savoring the intoxicating scent of spring, and smiled. Freedom. That word now sounded like music to her ears. She got into a taxi and gave the address of a small rented apartment she had secured a few weeks prior, anticipating such a moment. It was a modest yet cozy dwelling in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the opulent Svetlana Pavlovna was accustomed to. But for Lena, that was irrelevant now. What mattered most was her personal space, a sanctuary where she could be herself and raise her child in love and respect. Throughout the ride, Lena gazed out the window, watching the fleeting lights of the city at night. Fragments of memories flashed through her mind. The wedding, filled with false smiles and scornful glances, Svetlana Pavlovna's endless reproaches and criticisms, Igor's silence, his inability to protect her. And now, finally, a definitive end. She would no longer tolerate being humiliated by anyone. Lena understood that her prolonged patience had been a mistake. She had naively believed that her love for Igor and the hope for a happy family could thaw the ice in his mother's heart, but Svetlana Pavlovna had proven to be an impenetrable wall for whom the feelings of others held no value. She was accustomed to controlling everything and would not allow anyone to disrupt her plans. Upon arriving at the apartment, Lena's first act was to take a shower. The hot water washed away not only the remnants of her makeup and her celebratory gown, but also the burden of her grievances and disappointments. Emerging from the bathroom, she donned a soft housecoat and brewed herself a cup of herbal tea. She needed to calm herself and collect her thoughts. She sat on the sofa, cradling her belly. The baby was paramount now. She had to be strong for its sake. It needed a loving and caring mother, not a tormented and degraded woman. Her phone remained silent. Igor had not called. Lena didn't know what to expect. She understood he was torn between her and his mother. Svetlana Pavlovna was undoubtedly employing every tactic to regain control over her son. She would pressure him, manipulate him, threaten him. Igor had always been weak against her onslaught. Daliena held no illusions about his strength or willpower. She loved him, but she recognized he had been raised in a hothouse environment and was unaccustomed to making independent decisions. Svetlana Pavlovna had always decided for him. Now he faced the most critical choice of his life, a choice that would determine his future and the future of their child. Lena glanced at the clock. It was late. She decided to postpone all thoughts until morning. For now, she needed rest and rejuvenation. She finished her tea, turned off the light, and went to bed. Closing her eyes, she envisioned her child's face. The thought warmed her heart and lulled her to sleep. The next morning, Lena awoke to the bright sunlight filtering through the curtains. She rose, exercised, and prepared breakfast. She needed to formulate a plan of action. She knew Svetlana Pavlovna would not leave her in peace. She would seek revenge. Lena had to be prepared. Her first step was to contact her attorney. She required legal counsel regarding divorce and child custody. She sought no demands from Igor. All she desired was freedom and the ability to raise her child in a healthy environment. By noon, a knock sounded at the door. Lena froze. She knew who it was. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Igor stood on the threshold, looking bewildered and dejected. "Lena, I need to talk to you," he said in a quiet voice. Lena nodded silently and let him into the apartment. Igor walked into the room and sat on the sofa. He remained silent for a long time, his gaze fixed downwards. Lena waited, not hurrying him. She knew he needed time to gather his thoughts. "Mother is furious," Igor finally said. "I'm Igor," Lena replied calmly. "I simply left. I could no longer endure the humiliation. I want my child to grow up in love and respect. If you wish to be with us, you must make a choice. You must decide who is more important to you, me and our child, or your mother." Igor fell silent again. Lena could see him struggling internally. She understood how difficult this was for him. He had lived his entire life under his mother's tutelage. He found it hard to envision life without her control. I don't know what to do," he whispered. "Igor, you are an adult," Lena said. "You must make your own decision. I will not compel you to do anything. I simply want you to be happy. If your happiness lies in staying with your mother, I will understand." Lena rose and walked to the window. She looked out at the street, up at the passers-by, hurrying about their business. She felt free and strong. She no longer feared the future. She knew she could handle anything. "Lena, wait," Igor said. He got up from the sofa and walked towards her. I've decided. I want to be with you. I want to be a father to our child. I'm tired of my mother's control. I want to live my own life." Lena turned to him, tears welling in her eyes. She embraced Igor. "I believe you," she whispered. "I believe you can become a worthy husband and father." But Lena knew this was only the beginning. Many challenges lay ahead. Svetlana Pavlovna would not give up easily. She would fight for her son until the end. But Lena was prepared for this fight. She would no longer allow herself to be humiliated. She would protect her family. Igor left, promising to return the next day. Lena remained alone in the apartment. She sat on the sofa and closed her eyes. She pictured their life together, raising their child, loving each other. She had unwavering faith in their shared future. A profound sense of contentment settled over her. Lena embarked on a new chapter in her life, dedicating herself to her work, self-care, and preparing for the arrival of their child. Igor actively supported her, assisting with household tasks, sharing inspiring stories from books, and articulating his aspirations for their tomorrows. He had secured employment with a fledgling software development firm, finding genuine fulfillment in his role, a position that fostered a sense of liberation and autonomy. Svetlana Pavlovna, however, refused to let them be. She relentlessly contacted Igor daily, imploring him to return, in issuing veiled threats against both him and Lena. She attempted to sway them with material incentives, offering financial compensation and property, yet Igor remained resolute, firmly stating his deep affection for Lena and his desire to forge their own path. Svetlana Pavlovna found this unconscionable and resolved to exact retribution. She began to disseminate malicious gossip about Lena, portraying her as a gold digger who had bewitched Igor. Her objective was to alienate all their mutual acquaintances. Lena remained unfazed, recognizing Svetlana Pavlovna's attempts to break her spirit. She steadfastly refused to yield. Lena possessed a resilient inner strength and unwavering self-assurance, knowing that truth was on her side. Time moved forward. Lena gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy, whom they named Mikhail. Igor was utterly enthralled by his son, devoting every available moment to him. He meticulously cared for him, from bathing and feeding to engaging in playful interactions, embodying the role of a devoted father. Lena observed them, a gentle smile gracing her lips, experiencing a deep sense of happiness. She understood they had made the right decision. Their life was built upon a foundation of love, mutual respect, and freedom, and she knew nothing could undermine it. However, their story was far from over. Svetlana Pavlovna had not abandoned her schemes. Her thirst for revenge persisted. She patiently awaited the opportune moment for her plan to unfold. The question remained: could Lena safeguard her family? Could Igor stand firm against his mother's influence? Only time would reveal the answers. But Lena harbored one absolute certainty. She would no longer tolerate mistreatment. She was prepared to fight for her happiness with every fiber of her being.